Thank you. Australia. Good day. How you going? You guys good? You pumped? You pumped? Good, me too. Holy shit. This has been like an amazing day, and we've had some crazy good speakers. I've been to a handful of conferences in my life, and in my experience, out of every, say, like 7 talks, you get one really shit one. We've had 6 really good talks today, so, you know, prepare to be underwhelmed. Let me take this hat off. Right, me. I'm Espen. I am a creative director and a designer and a co-founder of a small company, and I'm also like the best illustrator in the world, as you can see. I'm from Norway, which means I have a Viking hat and I have like loads of oil money. But I currently live and work in Edinburgh, in Scotland. That's the other side of the world, for those of you who don't know. My company is called Primates. We're quite small. There's 10 of us now, and we do websites and web apps and different things online. A big part of what we do is brochure sites and campaign sites. So I'm going to be talking less about style guides and more about the creative side of web design. I have 2 dogs, Odin and Freya. They're way cuter in real life. And I'm on the social thing, Twitter and Instagram, Brunborg. Check me out. Now, all right, okay, so usually I forget to plug in the sound into my computer, so that's why I've got this slide. Now it's all set up already, so, you know, I should have deleted those slides. But I didn't, so that's good. So is it too late now? Maybe I just, you know, get on with it. Comedy. Let's talk about comedy. Comedy is not just stuff that's funny and ha-ha. I think, for me, comedy is also stuff that's tragic or emotional or surprising. You know, online, comedy represents the personality, all the stuff that you don't get in a style guide. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about today. But before we get there, I just want to read a little story for you guys. I brought a book, my pocket Bible, and I'm going to read a small segment called Genesis. Can we dim the lights now, please? Nice. All right. You guys ready? Before I start, I should say, please don't be offended. It's all just a laugh. It's all fictional. I've made all this stuff up. There is no God, or maybe there is. Who knows? So, you know, if you guys have an issue with this, speak to me afterwards. And if there's anyone else, you know, that has an issue with this, just, you know, give me a sign or something like that. Okay. I didn't hear that. Now, in the beginning, there was only HTML. And the internet was really ugly indeed. And God said, let there be style. And behold, there was CSS. And his followers praised all the colors, and they praised all the fonts. And they floated left, and they floated right. And they rejoiced. And God was very pleased with himself. And he decided to celebrate with a few drinks. On the second day, God created Flash. And he was very hungover when he did so. And he said, praise me, for I have given you vector graphics and animation. And his followers praised him as they waited for the page to load. And then they clicked skip intro, and God was very disappointed because he worked really hard on that intro. And his followers inserted adverts on all their pages, and God started to think that maybe Flash was a mistake, and it was a bad idea to get drunk on a Monday night. But on the third day, God created his WordPress, and he was determined to correct his mistake. And he said, praise me, for I have given you a voice. Now go forth and blog about love and kindness and everything that's good about the world. Hallelujah. And his followers rejoiced, and they said, "Hallelujah, world." And of course, they blogged vigorously about interior design and makeup and celebrities, and then they developed WordPress plugins for all of their adverts. On the fourth day, God created the iPhone, and the world went completely bonkers. But a young disciple named Ethan from Boston despaired, and he pleaded with the Lord, "Dear Lord, the iPhone is great, but now all of our clients are saying, can we get our desktop site and a mobile site? Can you help us, please?" And the Lord heard his plea, and he appeared before Ethan in the shape of a burning modem. And the Lord said, and then he gave young Ethan the holy staff of media queries and told him to spread the gospel of responsive design. And then the world finally rejected the Flash because the iPhone wouldn't display their adverts. On the fifth day, God unleashed upon his creation HTML video and retina screens and professional typography and all kinds of other marvelous things. And he said, "Praise me, for I have made it so that you may express yourselves more creatively and more beautifully." And his followers rejoiced, and the internet tripled in size, and everything started to take forever to load, and autoplay video adverts became a thing. But on the sixth day, God created preprocessors and frameworks and style guides and pattern libraries and design systems, and he said, "Praise me, for I have made it so that you may express yourself more efficiently and more consistently." And his followers rejoiced, and they quickly set about arguing about naming conventions. Yet God went to bed with a smile on his face because he knew that his work was done, and he was looking forward to Netflix and chill. So on the seventh day, God woke up early because he was so excited to see what his followers had made of his creation. And he visited all of the sites and all of the apps, and he wondered how so many things could look so similar. And he wondered why there were adverts everywhere, and he wondered why everything took so long to load. And he clicked this link that said, "Lion meets human adoptive father after 13 years. You will never guess what happens next." And he was very disappointed when he found out, because he already knew. Because God is all-knowing. And the more God explored, the more frustrated he grew. And by the end of the day, he thought to himself, "Fuck this. I gave them a great voice, but they're not speaking of anything important. I gave them boundless creativity, but everything is just monotonous and dull. They're simply not worthy." And so he decided to smite his followers and cleanse his creation of sin. And thus, God created ad blockers and went back to sleep. So, thus beginneth the internet. We get the lights back? Excellent. This pretty much takes us up to now, 2016. And in 2016, we have a really rich, vast array of tools, and it's easier to create websites than it's ever been. It's dull and homogeneous, and every site looks the same, but maybe that's just a result of the way we make websites. We got all these publishing platforms, we've got free hosting packages, we've got templates, we've got themes. We've got practically this huge, massive publishing machine. It looks like this, and this is what we use to make websites nowadays. The first part of the publishing machine involves the CMS. Now, when it comes to CMS, we have so many platforms. So if you want to do a blog, well, you press the top button, WordPress. If you want to do a magazine, press the middle button, WordPress. If you want to do a brochure or marketing site, you press the third button, WordPress. Or there's Squarespace, or the Grid, or Drupal, or Joomla. There's literally a handful of platforms to choose from. The CMS is about the content, but of course the web needs layout as well. This is where the templates come in, or the design systems, if you like. Now, when it comes to templates, we have, again, like almost too much choice. You can basically switch the dial between Classic 1, it's for the company that really wants to stand out, or Classic 2, for the competing company that really wants to stand out. And then once we've chosen our templates, we can start theming our website. And the theme is really the icing on the cake. It gives us like personality, it makes it look different, it gives it style, right? So again, we have choice. We can go for retro or vintage. There's traditional, old-fashioned, and of course shiny from the Web 2.0 days. The point of the theme is to make your site super unique, but also kind of similar to everyone else's. Because you don't want someone to go to your website and go, oh, what's this? I don't like it. Take me back to my comfort of shiny buttons or whatever. Now, after the theme, there's a really handy funnel where you can put all the content in. I'm not going to dwell on this because, honestly, who gives a shit, right? Just to be clear, content is important. But anyway, we put the content in, we push a button, and then out the other side comes our website. Look at it. It's so beautiful. There's literally minutes of time have gone into this beautiful website, and we're really proud of it. There's only one problem. It looks like every other website out there. So most websites look the same, they read the same, and they work the same. There's this really predictable pattern to how the web works and how it looks. And sometimes that's a really good thing. Jeroen Schoen wrote a really good article. It's called The Defense of Homogeneous Design. He mainly talks about digital product design. So with digital products, we have this UI language that we've built up over years and years. Right? People are getting used to it now. They know what certain icons mean. They're used to looking for stuff in certain places. So consistency is good. Like if jackets kind of look the same, but it's good to know that it's got pockets and you know where the pockets are, not on the back. This consistency is good in general. But we're not all making jackets. Some people are making jackets, other people are making socks or gloves or hats or scarves or underwear. Underwear is really important as well. So it's a diverse worldwide web out there. There's property listing of sites or charity campaign sites, news sites, beer shops and portfolios and to-dos and Facebook and whatever. We have all these different functions and they require a lot of different forms. But the problem is our cookie cutter publishing machine doesn't have that many forms. We have so many different shapes, yet so few holes. Mark Bolton wrote this other article. It's called Design Abstraction Escalation. And in it, he kind of talks about design patterns as a thing. And basically, a design pattern is like, it's a snippet of whatever, code or content or design, pure design. And we collect those things and we store them in this big chest of drawers. So you got your navigation patterns and your footer patterns and your checkout patterns and your signups and your variables and whatever. It's really handy to do this. Like we pick up some cool stuff, we store it away, and then the next project we just pull it all out and we can reuse it. It makes the process quicker, it makes the web more consistent, but it changes our process from design to manufacturing. And Mark says that conformity and efficiency, it has a price. And essentially that price is the soul or the humanity of what we're creating. We're losing the sense that this has been created from scratch for someone specific. And that's the problem, I think, with the mindset of the publishing machine. We go for quantity and conformity and cheapness over quality and individuality. There's like a recipe to designing and building the web. And we start to think maybe that systems and algorithms can solve problems. Another article worth reading is by Joshua Topolsky. He's the co-founder of The Verge. And his article is called Your Media Business Will Not Be Saved. In it, he talks about big companies' tendencies to, they freak out when there's ad blockers and they're looking for the next thing. Maybe it's ad blocker blockers and then ad blocker blockers. But the problem isn't in technology. The problem isn't, oh, we need VR now, or we need like 4K video on our site. The problem isn't in how we implement stuff. The problem is that we make a lot of shit. This is a long quote, by the way, it's 3 slides. So we make all this shit, and it's really cheap, and no one really cares about the shit, because our audience is like increasingly aware. They talk to each other, they expect certain things, and they're like, you know, they're on to us. They know we're producing shit, and they don't want it. What they want is the good shit, of course, and they'll go somewhere to find it. You know, they might even pay for it. There's a really good example in Holland. There's something called a Die Correspondent. Does anyone know about this publication? It was just set up by some or their current journalists, but they used to work for a big publication. Now they just did their own thing, and it was all membership-based, and they've now got like 60,000 subscribing members in Holland. And it's a really good example of like when people get together and write really fucking good content, really good journalism, and you have good design and everything comes together, people are actually willing to pay for this stuff. So my question is, why don't we just try and make our shit good again? Which neatly ties into my next chapter, the good shit. Now, all of us know good shit when we see it. But what defines good shit? How do we know what it is? What defines good design? I've got this list, right? And I hope most of you will agree. Good design is fast. So you want to give people what they want when they want it. You don't want any distractions or clutter. You don't want people to wait for a slow internet connection. Good design is universal. So the aim is to give people the same experience everywhere. In any country, any device. And if you do anything else than that, then you're kind of discriminating about a whole bunch of people. Good design is intuitive. It speaks in this language that we've all learned by now. It's predictable. It doesn't require you to relearn everything every time you open a new website. Also, good design is invisible, right? We've all heard this thing like successful design isn't noticed. It's just there in the background facilitating the content or facilitating the user journey. Good design is user-centric. So it's not about me or you as a designer. It's about the user. There should be no ego in good design. It's all about what the users want, and then you base your designs on the feedback that you get from them. And finally, good design is scientific. It's measurable, it's testable, it allows us to make iterative improvements and just slowly make our collective designs better. Excuse me. Who here agrees with this list? A few. I think this is all true, and I think it's really good principles to have. But I also think there is this other mindset. There's another set of truths that are equally valid, but maybe overlooked sometimes. For example, good design can be slow. So sometimes creating an emotional connection, it takes time. It's not always instant. And that means sometimes it's worth taking the time to get a point across. Do you know what I mean? Just, let's not rush things. Right. Good design is individual. So the best design experience is the one that feels like it's made for you. It's like if you read a book and you feel like, oh my God, it's inside my head. That's good design as well. Sometimes that's universal, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes the lowest common denominator gets in the way. And I would like to say that your website, whatever you're making, it isn't for everybody out there. Not even Facebook is for everyone. And every website out there is not for you either. So it's okay to be individual about who you're targeting. Good design is surprising. So it's really good or valuable to laugh at an unexpected joke. Discovering something you didn't intend to find is also really empowering. Good design is impressive. I don't know if you guys know Seb Lester. Have you seen his calligraphy work? Anyone? It's fucking amazing, right? He takes these poems and then he writes them with the most intricate detail, and you can just tell that's like 10 years of work going into this one page, right? That visual impression is really valuable and it can communicate something about the poem or the piece of text or whatever you're trying to communicate. There's real value in amazing people with visuals or complexity or just showing the value or showing the result of like visible effort. And of course, good design is visionary. There's this old saying about Henry Ford, and if he asked his audience, what do you want? They would have said, I want a faster horse. But he had a vision. And the iPod as well. What if Steve Jobs took his kind of budding idea to a focus group and said, hey, what do you guys want from a new MP3 player? The singular good vision, it dies when you expose it to a committee. And that means that even if your committee is users, somewhere along the lines you can lose what makes your idea unique if you expose it to feedback like that. And finally, good design is artistic. It's enlightening, it's challenging, it's emotional. It's not always just a surface thing. It's not always just solving a UI problem. And I think really immersive, surprising, or emotional experiences, you can't really predict them. You can't A/B test your way to originality. So, we have these two sets of statements, and I think they're both true. But what's weird is that they seem opposite. You might agree with some of these and disagree with others, but I feel like in the community as a whole, there's people like me and Andy who's like, oh, art direction, creativity, and then you have like, no, efficiency and conformity and make it perform better, etc. And we can call these two groups utility versus beauty, or science versus art, or convention versus expression. They're naturally opposed. Convention is fast and smooth, easy, it's simple. An expression is sometimes slow, or there's friction involved, or it's hard, or it's complex. But both are equally valid. So we have this battle going on, like the two mindsets are fighting, but why? Mark Bolton says maybe our challenge isn't to figure out who's better, but to see it from a different perspective. Maybe we can use both. There's no need for us to swing from one extreme to the other. We don't have to fight. We don't have to decide. We can have convention and expression. We could have science and art, utility and beauty, or, wait for it, music and comedy. Now, this will be relevant in a few minutes, so just bear with me. I can't really talk about music and comedy without introducing this guy, Jeff Greenspan. He's an artist and creative director out of New York. I met him in Barcelona almost exactly a year ago today, and it was a really good meeting. We both love Seinfeld. We're both into comedy, we're both into music, and we had a really good conversation about all this. And it's not because we had common interests, it's because of this. It's because what Jeff told me about music and about comedy. He says, well, they're basically just about rhythm, right? They play our brains, but they play our brains in different ways. But the basis for that is rhythm. So musical rhythm is easy. We all know musical rhythm. Right. So musical rhythm, we can nod along to or clap to or dance to. I think everybody here knows what rhythm is in terms of music. Comedy is different. So I've got this bonus chapter just for you guys to explain the rhythm of comedy. So the rhythm of comedy is invisible, but it's basically threefold. So there's a setup, there's anticipation, and then there's a punchline. So the first example is this classic hipster joke. Now, how did the hipster burn his tongue? That's the setup. Then we have anticipation. You guys are like, oh, I can't wait to see the answer. And then at the end, we get the punchline. He drank his coffee before it was cool. All right, I'm going to do another one. This time, I'm going to just drop the whole anticipation stage. So to help you guys realize when we've reached the punchline, I've got some sound effects. So, how did the hipster die? He drowned in the mainstream. Final one. How much does a hipster weigh? An Instagram. All right, I think we got the rhythm of comedy. All right, so music and comedy, they're based on rhythm, right? What is rhythm? Rhythm is this, expectation and reward. So both music and comedy they set up expectations in their rhythms, but what makes them radically different is the reward, right? So I'll show you an example related to music. So with music, the reward is that your expectation is met, right? We expect the next beat, and then we're relieved and happy when we hear it. We expect certain harmonies and certain tones to work together, and then when they do, it feels like music. When it doesn't, it feels like experimental jazz or like gibberish. So that's kind of the expectation of music. Now, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna play a short video. It's from the World Science Fair. What is it called? Something. And it's got this really famous guy in it. You probably know him from Don't Worry, Be Happy. It's Bobby McFerrin. He's since grown up and he's become this really incredible jazz musician and thinker. And he does this amazing piece on expectation in music that I just couldn't bring myself to repeat on stage. I'm going to let him do the work.
Talking about expectations. Watch. Ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. Okay. Yeah.
Right? This is the inherent expectation, and this is how music works inside of us. He says later on in this video that he can do this anywhere else in the world, and it still works. Something weird about it. And like I said, the reward of music is when those expectations are met. Comedy is the opposite of music in that reward is when your expectation is not met. I don't have like a big fancy video about this, but I've got this drawing. This is Bob, who's on his way to work. So I'm setting up an expectation for you guys that he's just going to go to work. Sit down at his desk, do some work, chat by the cooler, go home, fall asleep with his wife. So that's the expectation, but obviously the funny part happens when I break that expectation. Oops. Notice the arm. It's the power of keynote. So we got the setup and we got the punchline, and the punchline is basically just violating whatever expectation you set up. Comedy is really only funny when the expectation is violated because we're surprised. Anyway, I was super inspired, right, by this conversation. It made so much sense, and I felt like it had a connection to me and to what I do. That's what we do as humans. Like, how can I make this about me? Now, it made me think about storytelling, right? And storytelling is kind of the same thing. Storytelling is just a balance between breaking expectations and meeting expectations, right? So to use an example like Star Wars. Star Wars, like every other story out there that's successful, it has a structure. And that structure is music, right? You're setting up certain expectations. There's the first act, second act, third act. There's the story arc, etc. So the music in terms of storytelling is the structure. Luke learns about the Empire, he fights the Empire, and he is victorious. That's basically the setup. Comedy is all the other shit, right? Comedy makes the story arc not linear. It makes it go up and down. There's twists and turns, you know, there's plot twists. It makes the story unpredictable, but it's still within the safety of this structure. And it's not necessarily funny. Like Star Wars isn't really a comedy. It could be shock and surprise and, you know, all the weird shit that happens in movies. Like, he finds out that Darth Vader is his father. No, that's comedy, right? It breaks from your expectations. Or even worse, Leia is his sister. Oh no, it's too late now. Right, so this, like I said, I took a lot from that conversation, and it took me in places I didn't want to go. My takeaway is this. Like music sets expectations and meets them, and comedy sets expectations, then breaks them. And good storytelling relies on both, right? I'm calling this the Greenspan hypothesis, so you know, if you want to tweet it, make sure you like Google his name and send it to him. Now, what does this have to do with web design? Well, we are storytellers. Andy touched on this. And you know, obviously sometimes we're literal storytellers. We're telling the story about, I don't know, an editorial piece, or we're describing a product, or we're selling a service, whatever it is. Like, we're literally telling a story through the words on the page and our layouts and design skills. Other times, we're like indirect storytellers. We set up signposts, we create this journey, and then the users complete the journey and they create the story, right? You know, Facebook or Amazon, whatever, what would you call like a web app, I guess? It kind of creates a journey for people and they get to create their own story within that. So we're all storytellers, and I think the best designers are the best storytellers. Like, the success of design to me is not what colors you're using or what typography you're using, it's how you tell the story, how you get your point across, how emotionally connected you get to your audience. Which then brings me to music and comedy in the context of web design. What do they represent? I'll try and be as clear as possible. I'm aware this is slightly sort of metaphorical at this point. But to me, music and web design is, you know, UX and usability and performance, pattern libraries, style guides, predictability, consistencies, all this stuff that makes it more efficient and quicker and safer and expectable. It meets all our conventions and expectations. And so, you know, the delight of music in an interface, it's when it just works. You don't have to think, it doesn't surprise you, it just works the way you want it to. Music is making certain things look clickable so that we just know that that's a button. It's changing our text slightly. Instead of let's go, we can say save because it's clearer. It requires less mental action. It's also taking things like a kind of convoluted hamburger menu and making it into a much more easily accessible thumb menu at the bottom of a phone. So that's music in web design. Comedy, well, comedy is the other stuff, right? It's personality and difference and friction, confidence, randomness, beauty, surprise, humor, emotion. It's all the stuff that makes our sites less predictable. It's the unexpected stuff. And I think we all know what music looks like, what a good sort of UI looks like. So I'll try and show some examples of how comedy can be implemented on a website. This is from Medium. This is a very musical website. It's the epitome of blog design. It's super easy to understand. It's super smooth. Typography is good. It's legible. It scrolls the way you expect it to. The links work the way you expect them to. The picture of hipster Dave is there as you expect it to be. You know, it's really easy to use. And then you have Amplify, which is a magazine for a business gateway up in Edinburgh. Now, this is also a reading experience. It's basically just a whole bunch of articles put together into this sort of magazine, digital magazine thing, right? you can see that the layout's kind of different. It's got different interactivity. There's more variation in terms of illustration and photography and layout. It's basically taking the content and trying to make something that has more personality or more emotional impact or whatever you want to call it. When you leave this site, you may not agree to use whatever JavaScript they've used for the scroll bits, but it leaves a lasting impression in terms of the feel of the product. Of course, the content has to be well written as well, but this, to mention Andy's thing, this kind of goes back to art directing the web, right? So that's kind of introducing some comedy to a reading experience. But this is Mr. Butt. There's always buts, right? So, but not every site is like a blog, and doing like custom art direction for every single piece of content is super expensive. That's fine. Like, you can be different in other ways. You can be comedic in other ways. So this is the portfolio site for a fiction writer called Alan Trotter. This is the homepage. There is no hero image of a typewriter. There's no navigation. It's crazy. There's no contact details. But there are these links. You can see some of the words are underlined. So if you go to this, and if you're slightly curious, you might click one of these links, and the whole thing just comes alive, right? You click on, you discover more sentences, more words through clicking on the words that he's chosen for you. This took me back to, my old sort of Dungeons and Dragons days. And did you guys have those text-based adventure books thing where you get a question, go to page 14? This is the same principle, and he's forcing me to read. He's hiding his contact details. He's hiding his Twitter. But because I'm like, I want to kind of get to the end, I want to figure this thing out, I just click and click and click. And by the end of 10, 15 minutes, I've read the first chapter of his book. So this is like real storytelling, but it's forced engagement. He's kind of saying, well, if you're interested, you'll read it. If not, just fuck off. But, says Mr. Butt, hiding things and making people work is way too risky for me. That's a valid point, right? That's not for everyone. But you still need to have some personality, something else on your site to make people engage or commit to an action, whatever it is. So this is a site that we did earlier on this year. In Scotland, there's an organization called Children First. They try and help kids that have fallen outside of the kind of safety net, so to speak. Abused kids, or people who struggle, or kids are homeless or orphans or whatever. And they were like, we want more people to sign up to our newsletter. What can we do? Now, the musical way of doing that is just to go, here's a big form. You follow all the accessibility standards. You have name, email, check a couple of boxes, submit. That's all you need, right? But why would people just fill in a form on a random page? You need a story. You need something around it to make people engage. So the idea that we came up with was called Create a Smile. And what we did was we created this campaign site where basically people could log on and they could create these little avatars, just randomize them. And we had little animations and a starburst and a little puff of smoke and stuff, all just to make it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun, so that people might sit and spend 30 seconds clicking through, right? And this is done on a budget. We could have done more with it. We could have had real customization, but it was fun for us. Like, we had an SVG file with about 20 hairstyles, a few facial features, different types of glasses, and a whole bunch of colors. So we could generate like 35,000 unique faces with this. And I think right now they've got something like 2,500 people signed up. But I don't think we would have had 2,500 people if we didn't have this kind of fluff around it. Like, we're telling a story. We're getting people behind a cause. And we're trying to make the action pleasurable as well. But, says Mr. Butt, we don't have the resources to pull that off. Custom illustrations are expensive. Like animations. What about browsers? It's too scary for us. Okay. You don't have to go full tilt on illustration either. This is a conference website for a design conference, and I've never seen anything like it before. There's like tickers, and everything is black and white. There's no pictures. Every single letter or word has like a weird hover state. It's like, it's just a little bit out there. It's a little bit weird. Obviously, it's sold out, so, you know, it can't be that bad. And what makes it good for me is that it's memorable. They're just daring to get out there and create something that's different. But, says Mr. But, my client will never sign off on anything like that. That's cool, okay. You don't have to be like super radical and redefine a conference website. You can work with copywriting or just little Easter eggs or whatever to make your site more engaging. This is our website at Primate. And when we started, we were like, okay, we're called Primate. There's obviously this link to chimps or whatever, but we don't want to plaster monkeys all over our website. But what we did was, in our bio section, Gordon, my co-director, he wrote these really funny bios for people that are like monkey bios, right? So there's like a small monkey button, you can click on that, and then, you know, the whole thing flips around. So the standard bio is like, Bart's got a master's degree in philosophy, blah, 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 he's a good developer, etc., etc., etc. If you click on the monkey, you get his monkey bio, you know? After beating his captor to death with a makeshift wooden club, Bart masterminded a successful prison breakout, leading his fellow chimpanzees through long-awaited freedom, etc. Now, we've had feedback from people who found this, like, oh my god, they're so cute, really funny monkey bios. And it doesn't take much to just do this. You don't have to do this on your big corporate website and just be wonky. But if you have a personality, show it. But, says Mr. But, it's getting a bit tedious, isn't it? We're not a small design agency. You know, we're not talking about portfolio site. We're a big corporation. Okay, well, big companies can be funny too. Big companies can have humor and personality as well. You all know Zendesk? Know what it is? So it's like tickets and customer service and whatever. Obviously, their product is super musical. Again, it's like an app where you just have to make sure everything flows naturally, no distractions, etc. But they also need to sell that product to people, right? So this is their homepage as it was, I think, a year ago. The whole thing is about bringing companies and their customers closer together. Now, I know this looks like the standard layout, and it's a hero image and a strapline and a button, etc. But this is a video, and they're taking their kind of strapline to the extreme, right? This isn't like a small design agency. These guys are reaching thousands of people, and they're daring to just be funny, like throw a joke in there and see if people connect with it. And I just think, like, she just seems so real to me, like a human being, and it makes me feel better about the company. Ah, but, says Mr. But. Well, I'll tell you something, Mr. But. Shut the fuck up. Now, I'm not condoning violence, by the way. There is an appropriate question here, which is, when is comedy relevant? When is it appropriate to use comedy or, you know, surprise or whatever on the website? My feeling on it is that comedy is the thing that helps you sell the product. Comedy enhances your storytelling, right? So if you want people to get on board with what you're saying, or your product, or your services, or your cause, whatever it is, use comedy, have a personality, surprise people, be funny. But then music, the smooth flow of like an efficient interface, that just helps people make the purchase or the action or whatever you're trying to convince them to do, make that part super easy. An example of that kind of split is this site we did for a company called PWS Work Services. They do worktops for kitchens, which is kind of boring to start with. And then everybody's seen those kind of fancy shots of kitchens with like a smooth surface and someone drinking coffee in the background. It was difficult for us to find an angle on the storytelling. How do we tell the story differently? How do we get people behind them and really understand how much these people care? So we decided to like drop the big hero image of kitchen worktop and focus on the materials, right? Because we went to their factory and we got to see like how much work goes into each single worktop. They have 4 different materials: granite, timber, solid surface, and quartz. Now, in terms of granite, the journey starts millions of years ago. The rock is formed from lava, right? Then it obviously looks like this. It's carved out in these quarries. The big blocks are cut into slabs. The slabs are polished. They hit the road, they travel across the continent, they arrive at the factory, they're cut to the right size, they're polished, they're finished off, they're inspected, and at the end of this million-year-long journey, it's installed in someone's kitchen. Now, we put the call to action here. We've got it at the top as well, just to be safe. But basically, if people feel engaged in this, then they can go and explore, right? And when you're in this mode, you can see there's no fancy stuff going on here. It's not like a long storytelling page. It's just pure UI. You see the range, and then you click, you get a bit more information, and then you can get in touch or get a quote or whatever. So it's like a separation between when you spend your comedy budget, and I think you should spend that on the storytelling when you're trying to convince people that the thing that you're talking about is worth listening to. Right. I'm gonna get a drink, I think. I really need a segue to the next section. Oh, there it is. It's good. Okay. So, music and comedy are both really, really important, but why are we so serious? Why do we only focus on the musical part, right? Why are there conferences dedicated to design systems, but none of them dedicated to just creativity or storytelling? I think it's because we work in a really scientific environment. Because we can test things online, we do, right? So we test everything, we measure it, and we incrementally improve. We scientifically prove that this thing is slightly better than this thing. So we go with this thing, and then we test that against the other thing, and then we improve again. It makes sense. Like, metrics make us feel safe, even when those metrics are made up or unscientific. So we invent all these rules, right? And I feel like in terms of storytelling, we're trying to scientifically figure out which ink is the best ink to sketch with, or what's the correct line height in this pad that I'm writing on? What's the paper should I best use to write a story? Like, the implementation is the thing that we focus on. I find it really odd. Like, we're focusing on establishing rules of storytelling instead of actually how do we tell good stories? How do we become engaging and not so boring? And I think, rules are good or guidance is good, but over time, over the year, when we got Twitter and conferences and Medium posts, like, amplifying these rules, they become like commandments, right? Thou shalt not defineth thy line height in pixels. Have you guys heard this before? Thou shalt not maketh thy pages scroll infinitely. Thou shalt not taketh the name of the Lord performance in vain. Like, these are all good pieces of advice. But if it dictates everything we do, we end up with like a process that's frustrating, right? So we're designing a web page, or we're telling a story, we've got like 3 really important things to say, so we're going to put them side by side because then they got equal weight. Or, obviously, we start with mobile, because that's what the rules say. On mobile, the really challenging thing is just get the navigation to fit in, right? I've got a big navigation on this site, so I'm going to put it in a hamburger. It seems to work. Like, people know how to use that now. But, the rule book tells me not to do that, so screw the hamburger. I'm going to stack the navigation. It means I've got a little bit less space to work with on the page. That doesn't matter. The content can just, go underneath it. It doesn't matter if some of it is cut off. People know how to scroll these days. Except, if the content is important, I can't really squeeze it in under the fold, so that's really annoying. So, my solution is this. No scrolling. Just like naturally swipe between panels, and that... Sometimes design is just so nice. I think if we get too bogged down into the rules, it just take out all the fun. It makes us really predictable. Rules are boring. Don't make our websites boring, says Andy Clark. And me. I agree with Andy, and I don't know if you guys do, but I think we should all care about this, right? Because it's a fact. Boring makes less money. I know this because another industry has figured this out already, and that industry is the advertising industry. So I'm going to play a little clip just now. Right, who's seen the advert before? Okay, good, so it aired in Australia as well. Here's a metric for you. That advert is almost 10 years old, but I'm showing it because it really had an impact on the creative community in Britain when it was aired. People were writing about it, they were just hailing it as this super absurd, really creative advert. But what was really interesting from a business perspective is that it's made loads of money. Like, it really did well for Cadbury's. Now, just imagine being the guy who comes up with the idea of a monkey gorilla playing the drums, and you go to the exec and say, hey, do you want to sell more chocolate? I have an idea. You know, it's weird. It's not something you can just test yourself to. You just gotta have guts and just go for something that's out there. And when it pays off big.
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection, a pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics, and a mindset to master the most epic of splits.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows? Only time. We
Right, who's seen that advert before? Good. It's successful, right? A whole bunch of people who's never driven a truck before has seen the advert. Now, metric number 2. These are true figures, right? I'm not saying you have to use Jean-Claude Van Damme. What I'm trying to say is this: creative stuff, creative work, trying to get out there, it makes you more money because people take notice. In Cannes, there's a festival every year called the Cannes Lions, and they reward exclusively creative projects that do well, right? McDonald's are saying the stuff that win awards at the Cannes Lions, it does so much better in terms of money than the stuff that doesn't. Heineken are saying practically the same thing. So to me, it's obvious that there is a correlation between being creative and having a personality and having guts and the bottom line. I'm almost at the end of this now, but I'll leave you with a few thoughts. So this is the first one. When it comes to web design, there's more to it than consistency and usability and performance, etc. Those things are really important, but it's only half the picture. Because I think beauty and surprise and delight, all these other things, they're also really important. They're the things that make people engage and connect with us emotionally. So, how are you all feeling just now? We good? Okay, good. There's some energy still left in the room. Before we leave for the after party, I have this dream, right? I've never done this before, but I would really like to ask you guys to join me in standing up for this last bit. Is that okay? All right, cool. Thank you. Now, I've talked for 54 minutes and 23 seconds about this stuff, but I want to leave you with one image, right? I want to burn this image into your skulls. I want you to think about the good shit. The good shit loves music, efficiency and conformity, all that stuff, but the good shit also loves comedy, right? So it's my dream and hope today that once this conference is over, we can all hold hands, we walk out into the sunset, I think the timing's right, and we try and make musical comedy happen online. Thank you.